"Mom, this house is just too old. We're planning on doing a full renovation." My son, Julian, stood in the middle of the living room, his leather dress shoes leaving a clear imprint on the needlepoint rug I had spent 20 years making by hand. I knelt down, using my sleeve to gently wipe away the mark, just as I had when he was a little boy and would track mud across the floor. "A renovation sounds wonderful," I said, looking up with a smile. "When do you start? I can help you pack things up." My daughter-in-law, Samantha, walked out of the kitchen holding the tea I had just brewed. Her nail polish was so vividly red it looked like it could drip blood. "Don't trouble yourself, Mom. We've already arranged everything. You'll be moving into the senior living facility today." The teacup wobbled in my hand, and scalding tea splashed onto my skin, but I couldn't feel the pain. "Today?" My voice sounded like it was coming from a great distance. "It's so sudden." Julian frowned, an expression of impatience I was becoming all too familiar with. "We told you about this already. You must have forgotten. It's a classic sign of cognitive decline." I opened my mouth, wanting to say they had never mentioned a word of it, but in the end, I just nodded softly. "Let me pack some of my clothes and toiletries." "You won't need to bring much," Samantha interrupted. "The facility has everything you need. We have movers coming at 3 o'clock, so you should hurry." I slowly pushed myself to my feet, my knees groaning under the strain of 78 years. 50 of those years had been spent in this house, raising a family, and it was all ending with a 3-hour eviction notice. In the bedroom, my hand drifted over every familiar object: the framed photograph of my late husband, a crayon drawing my grandson made as a toddler, the teaching awards I had earned. A few simple floral dresses hung in the closet, the style my husband had always loved to see me in. I chose the 2 oldest ones and folded them into a plastic bag. "Mom, are you packed?" Julian pushed the door open, his eyes falling on the bag in my hands. "Is that all?" "It's enough," I said quietly. His gaze swept the room, landing on the picture frame on the nightstand. "You shouldn't bring Dad's photo. It's depressing." I instinctively clutched the frame to my chest. "I want to take this with me." "Suit yourself," Julian said, turning to leave. "Just hurry up. We have other things to do." An hour later, I stood at the front door with my small suitcase. Inside were my few articles of clothing, my husband's photograph, my blood pressure medication, and a single photo album. The rest of my 50 years of life was being left behind. "The key," Samantha said, holding out her hand. I pulled out my keychain and unfastened the old brass key, the one my husband had placed in my hand on our wedding day. He had carved our initial, V, into it. Samantha snatched it from my palm and tossed it carelessly into her designer handbag. "Let's go. Time to take you to the nursing home." Julian started the car without even offering to help me with my suitcase. The facility, Maple Creek Assisted Living, was on the outskirts of the city, a drab, grayish-white building. The hallways reeked of disinfectant. A few elderly residents sat in wheelchairs, staring blankly at the ceiling tiles. "We booked you a double room," Samantha explained as we walked. "It's $6,000 a month, which includes meals and basic care." $6,000, I calculated silently. Exactly the amount of my pension. The room was small, with 2 twin beds, a wardrobe, and a bathroom. My roommate, an old woman with a full head of white hair, just gave us a vacant nod when we entered before turning her attention back to the television. "Well, this is it," Julian said, checking his watch. "We have an appointment, so we have to go. Call if you need anything." As they turned to leave, I suddenly grabbed Julian's arm. "When will the renovation be finished?" Samantha let out a short laugh. "Renovations are very noisy, Mom. At your age, you shouldn't be moving back and forth. It's much better here. You'll have people to take care of you, and you'll make friends." I looked into my son's eyes, the same eyes as my husband's. "Julian, tell me the truth. Do you ever plan on letting me come back?" He avoided my gaze. "You're overthinking things. Just settle in and be comfortable here." The sound of their footsteps echoed down the hallway and then disappeared. I sat on the hard, unforgiving bed, clutching my husband's photograph, and for the first time, I allowed myself to cry. My roommate turned her head and handed me a tissue. "They're all like this on the first day. You'll get used to it after a while." I dried my tears and looked around the space that was supposed to be my new home. There was a water stain on the wall, shaped exactly like the old oak tree in the backyard of our house. That evening, dinner at Maple Creek was oatmeal and some limp green beans. I took a few bites and put my fork down. At precisely 9 o'clock, an aide came to turn off our lights, even though I was wide awake. In the darkness, I gently stroked the glass over my husband's picture. "My dear," I whispered, "our son doesn't want me anymore." The next morning, I was woken by the facility's intercom. Breakfast at 7 o'clock, health checks at 8, group activities at 9. I mechanically followed the other residents, lining up to have my blood pressure taken, eating my breakfast, and then sitting in the activity room while a young woman taught us finger exercises. "You must be new here," a man with glasses said, sitting down next to me. "My name is Peterson. I used to be a high school teacher." "Eleanor Vance." I managed a weak smile. "I was a teacher too. 4th grade English." "Oh, I know you." Mr. Peterson's eyes lit up. "You were Principal Vance at Lincoln Elementary, weren't you?" "My daughter was one of your students." I nodded. Lincoln Elementary, the place where I had worked for 35 years. When I retired, the entire school threw me a farewell party, and the children gave me a scrapbook they had made themselves. Where was that scrapbook now? Probably tossed in some corner of the old house. "Principal Vance, what brings you here?" Mr. Peterson asked. "Isn't your son that well-known lawyer?" A lump formed in my throat. "The house is being renovated." Mr. Peterson gave me a knowing look and didn't press further. In a place like this, stories like mine were probably all too common. That afternoon, I used the facility's phone to call Julian, wanting to ask about the house. The phone rang for a long time before he answered. "Hello?" The background noise was loud, like he was in a restaurant. "Julian, it's me. I wanted to ask." "Mom." His voice immediately turned impatient. "What is it?" "I'm with a client. I was just wondering about my books and photo albums." "We got rid of them." He cut me off. "Why keep all that junk? It just takes up space." A sharp pain shot through my chest. "You got rid of them? All of them?" "Mom, don't get hung up on this stuff. Are you settling in okay at the home?" "Julian," I took a deep breath. "I want to go back and get a few things." "No." His voice rose suddenly. "It's a construction zone. Dust everywhere. Don't make a mess of things." I could hear Samantha's voice in the background. "Who is it?" "My mom. She insists on coming back to get some stuff," Julian said, covering the receiver, but I still heard her. Samantha's voice came through clearly. "Tell her to stop dreaming. The locks have already been changed." The line went dead. I stood there, holding the receiver, a chill spreading through my entire body. They changed the locks. They never intended for me to come back. Returning to my room, I sat by the bed, watching the sunset. It was a fiery red, the color of Samantha's nail polish, the color of my shattered heart. My roommate, Carol, came back from her walk and saw my expression. She sighed. "Family won't let you go back?" I nodded as tears welled up again. "I've been here for 3 years, Carol said, sitting down. "My daughter immigrated, and my son is in New York. They used to call it first, but you get used to it. It gets better." I wiped my eyes. "No, I will not get used to this." That night, I tossed and turned. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I quietly got out of bed and pulled an old address book from the bottom of my suitcase. The facility had a rule against going out at night, but my anger and despair had shattered all rules. I slipped out of the room, crept down the silent hallway, avoided the gaze of the on-duty nurse, and left through a fire escape. The early morning city air was cold, the wind whipping through my white hair. I walked for a long time before I found a 7-Eleven that was still open. "Can I use the phone?" I asked the sleepy-eyed clerk. "Local or long distance?" "Local." I opened the address book and found a number I hadn't called in years. When the call connected, I took a deep breath. "Is this the Chicago Chronicle's tip line? I have a story for you." After the call, I bought a bottle of water and a newspaper at the convenience store and sat in a chair by the window to wait. My fingers tapped restlessly on the table, my heart beating so fast I felt dizzy. "Ma'am, are you okay?" the young clerk asked with concern. "Should I call for help?" The word help stabbed me like a knife. "No, thank you," I managed a smile. I'm waiting for someone. About half an hour later, a white van with Action News, 7 printed on the side, pulled up outside. A young woman with her hair in a ponytail jumped out and hurried into the store. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Eleanor Vance?" she asked, looking around. Her eyes landed on me. "I'm Maya Lynn, a reporter with Action News." I stood up, my legs trembling slightly from sitting so long. "That's me." Maya steadied my arm. "Are you all right? Can you tell us what happened?" She led me to the van, where a male colleague was holding a camera. Maya handed me a cup of hot tea and listened patiently as I recounted the events of the past 2 days. "So you're saying your son and daughter-in-law used a renovation as an excuse to put you in a nursing home, then changed the locks and refused to let you go home?" Maya's brow furrowed deeper and deeper. I nodded and pulled a photograph from my pocket. "This is a picture of my son and me in front of the house. It proves it's my home." Maya took the photo and gave the cameraman a meaningful look. "Mrs. Vance, do you know of any recent changes regarding your property? For example, is it scheduled for demolition, or is your son having financial difficulties?" I was stunned. "Demolition? I haven't heard anything. Julian is a lawyer. His income should be fine." "Let's check," Maya said, taking out a tablet and typing quickly. "Your address is 28 Elm Street, right?" I nodded, watching her fingers fly across the screen. A few minutes later, her expression grew complicated. "Mrs. Vance," she said, turning the screen toward me, "your neighborhood is indeed within a designated redevelopment zone. The compensation plan is expected to be announced next month." On the screen was a government planning document. The block where my house stood was outlined in red. My finger trembled as I zoomed in on the image, my heart pounding in my chest. "The compensation standard," Maya scrolled down the page, "based on a preliminary estimate, the buyout for your house would be around $2 million. $2 million. The number exploded in my mind. So that was why. That was why they suddenly threw me out and changed the locks. "Those monsters," I blurted out, then covered my mouth. I had never spoken about my son that way, not even during his most rebellious teenage years. Maya squeezed my hand. "Mrs. Vance, stay calm. We can report on this, and I know people at the Legal Aid Foundation who can help you." "I want to go back," I said suddenly. "Now? Right away?" Maya and the cameraman exchanged a look. "It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I have to confirm it," I insisted. "If what you say is true, that they're doing this for the buyout money." Maya finally agreed. The van drove quietly toward the city center, through the darkest streets just before dawn. When the familiar silhouette of my house came into view, my eyes welled up again. The van parked across the street. I was about to get out when Maya stopped me. "Wait, there's someone there." A strange car was parked in front of the house. 2 men were carrying things out of the front door. It was my bookcase, and my books that I had treasured for decades. "They're clearing out the house?" I almost burst out of the van, but Maya held me back firmly. "Mrs. Vance, don't tip them off. We need to get this on camera as evidence." The cameraman immediately set up his equipment, the lens aimed at my front door. Under the dim glow of the streetlights, I saw Julian and Samantha standing on the porch, directing the workers as they loaded my books, my furniture, and even my wedding portrait onto a truck. Those are my life's memories," I sobbed, watching them dispose of my past as if it were trash. Maya comforted me while dialing a number on her phone. "Hello, Miss Davis? It's Maya. I have an urgent case." As dawn began to break, the moving truck finally drove away. We waited in the van for another half an hour to make sure no one was coming back before we cautiously approached the house. I took out my key with a trembling hand. Even though I knew it was useless, I tried it instinctively. Of course it wouldn't fit. The lock had been changed. "Let's check the back," Maya said, leading me around to the backyard. The back door was also newly locked, but through a gap in the fence, I could see the old oak tree was still there, and beneath it, the stone bench my husband and I had built with our own hands. "Mrs. Vance, look at this," Maya said, pointing to a new sign posted by the door. It was a for sale sign. It read, "Owner motivated to sell, price negotiable." The contact person listed was Julian Vance. "He's selling the house. My voice was as light as a feather. While I'm still alive. Maya took a picture of the sign. This is key evidence. Mrs. Vance, let's go back to the station to sort through the footage, and then we'll go to the Legal Aid Foundation. Don't worry, we will help you get justice. On the way back to Maple Creek, I was as silent as a stone. Maya looked at me with concern. Mrs. Vance, are you okay? I was just thinking, I said slowly. I spent my life as an educator, teaching children right from wrong. How did I fail so badly with my own son? Maya had no answer, but she held my hand tightly. The sun was fully up by the time we reached the nursing home. I slipped back into my room to find Carol brushing her hair. You were gone all night, she said without turning around. I thought you'd run away. I went out, I said simply, hanging my coat in the wardrobe. Carol turned, her eyes sharp. Did you find a way? I nodded and pulled Maya's business card from my pocket. I have people helping me. Carol smiled, spoken like a true principal. I knew you weren't the type to just sit back and take it. I skipped the morning activities, claiming a headache so I could rest in my room. In reality, I was waiting for Maya's call. Around noon, the facility's intercom paged me for a phone call. Mrs. Vance, Maya's voice was full of energy. The story will air tonight at 6 o'clock. Miss Davis from Legal Aid wants to meet you. Can we pick you up at 3 o'clock this afternoon? Yes, I replied, my heart racing. After hanging up, I went back to my room and dug out a small cloth pouch from the very bottom of my suitcase. Inside was the emergency money I had saved over the years, $30,000 in cash, and a copy of the house deed. Yes, a copy. Julian had the original. But 20 years ago, I had the foresight to get a notarized copy from the county recorder's office. It was just a precaution at the time, but now it might be my lifeline. At 3 o'clock, Maya arrived at the entrance, alone this time in a small sedan. Mrs. Vance, she said, helping me with my seatbelt, Miss Davis has seen the preliminary information. She says your case is very strong. The Legal Aid Foundation was in a modest office building. Miss Davis was a woman in her early 40s, with thinning hair but eyes that burned with intensity. Mrs. Vance, she said, shaking my hand warmly, Maya has told me everything. First of all, your son's actions could constitute elder abandonment, which is illegal. She sat me down and asked for details about the house. When I produced the notarized copy of the deed, her eyes lit up. This has both your and your late husband's names on it, she said, pointing to the document. After your husband passed away, the full title should have passed to you. How did your son become the sole owner? I shook my head. I don't know. Julian has been managing all of these things for years. Miss Davis frowned. We need to check the property records. If he changed the title without your knowledge, that's fraud. For the next 2 hours, Miss Davis took detailed notes and had me sign several documents, authorizing her to investigate the property records and file a lawsuit on my behalf. Mrs. Vance, she said as I was leaving, you go back to the home and rest. Tomorrow, Maya and I will go to the county recorder's office. We'll let you know as soon as we find anything. Back at Maple Creek, dinner was already over. Carol had saved me a dinner roll and some pickles. How did it go? She whispered. The lawyer said she can help me, I replied, taking a bite of the roll. I suddenly realized I hadn't eaten all day, yet I felt no hunger. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Carol and I sat in the activity room, watching television. Action news came on. After a few routine local stories, the anchor's tone grew serious. And next, a story that is truly heartbreaking. A 78-year-old retired teacher, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, was sent to a nursing home by her son and daughter-in-law under the guise of a home renovation. She later discovered the locks to her home had been changed, leaving her unable to return. Even more shocking, Mrs. Vance's home is slated for a city redevelopment project with a buyout estimated at $2 million. My face appeared on the screen, along with photos of my house and the footage of Julian and Samantha directing the movers. Standing in front of Maple Creek, the reporter, Maya Lynn, spoke gravely. According to the Legal Aid Foundation, this case involves potential elder abandonment and property fraud. This station will continue to follow the story as it develops. Less than 10 minutes after the broadcast, the phone at the nursing home began ringing off the hook. The director came to find me herself, her expression a mix of awe and concern. "Principal Vance, you're on the news." I nodded calmly. "Yes, my son kicked me out of my house. I'm taking legal action to defend my rights." The director's expression shifted from surprise to understanding. "If you need any help at all, please let us know. My own father was a teacher. I remember attending one of your lectures when I was a child." Later that night, my old cell phone rang. It was Julian. It was the first time he had called me since I arrived at the home. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello? Mom?" Julian's voice was frantic and angry. "Are you out of your mind? Airing our dirty laundry on television? Do you have any idea how many people saw that? My clients, my colleagues?" "Julian," I interrupted him, "do you know which phone I'm using at this nursing home? It's the old one you got rid of last year. Do you know why I kept it? Because it has pictures of my grandson on it." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. "Mom, this is—" "We can talk about this." His tone suddenly softened. "Just get the TV station to stop. We'll pick you up tomorrow and bring you home." "Home?" I let out a cold laugh. "Which home? The one with the new locks? The one you're trying to sell? Do I even have a home anymore?" "That's all a misunderstanding," Julian said desperately. "We really were going to renovate. I just found out about the redevelopment plan myself." "Julian," I said calmly, "I lived in that house for 50 years. Every brick, every tile is soaked with your father's and my sweat and love. If you wanted to sell it, you should have at least waited until I was dead." I heard Samantha screeching in the background. "What are you wasting time talking to her for? Tell her if she doesn't drop the lawsuit, she'll never see her grandson again." I closed my eyes. Tell Samantha that threatening a retired teacher with her grandson is a very naive tactic. I hung up, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Carol brought me a glass of warm water. "It's the first time you've had to fight your own child, isn't it?" I nodded, the tears finally falling. I spent my life teaching right and wrong. I never thought I'd have to use the law against my own son. Carol patted my shoulder. "It's not you who failed him. It's he who failed you." That night, I slept surprisingly well. Perhaps it was because I had finally shed the burden of being a good mother. Or perhaps because I understood that some people, even your own son, are not worthy of endless patience and sacrifice. The next morning, the nursing home was buzzing with activity. Maya and Miss Davis arrived together, camera in tow. "We found crucial evidence," Maya said excitedly. Miss Davis opened her briefcase and pulled out a document. "The records from the county recorder's office show that 5 years ago, your son forged your signature to transfer the property title solely into his name. This is a clear criminal act." I stared at the document, a scene from 5 years ago flashing in my mind. Julian had said there was some paperwork I needed to sign and had me press my thumbprint on a stack of documents. My vision was already failing then, and I couldn't read the fine print. I had trusted him and did as he asked. "That monster," I murmured. "He would even cheat his own mother." "Mrs. Vance," Miss Davis said gravely, "we can immediately petition the court for an asset freeze to halt any sale of the property. At the same time, we can press charges against your son for elder abandonment and fraud. Are you willing to proceed?" I looked at the camera, at Maya's expectant gaze, at the legal documents in Miss Davis's hands. "I am." I said the 2 words with absolute conviction. After Miss Davis left, the phone at the nursing home rang incessantly. The director hurried over to tell me that several media outlets were requesting interviews. "Principal Vance, what should I do?" the director asked, wringing his hands, torn between maintaining the peace of his facility and respecting my rights. "Tell them to refer to the Action News reports," I said calmly. "For now, I only trust Maya Lynn and Miss Davis." Back in my room, Carol was waiting for me. She was holding a copy of the evening paper. The front page was dominated by my photo with the headline, "Elderly Teacher Abandoned. TWOMILLIONDOLLR. Buyout Shame Exposed." "You're famous," Carol said, handing me the paper. "The whole home is talking about it." I took the paper, my fingers trembling slightly. The woman in the photo looked frail, her face etched with wrinkles and her eyes red and swollen. She looked like a pitiful victim. But I didn't just want to be a victim. I wanted to be a fighter. "Carol?" I asked suddenly. "Do you have a smartphone?" Carol paused, then pulled a slightly used phone from her drawer. "My son's old one. It barely works. Can you teach me how to go online and read the news?" Carol's eyes lit up. Of course. For the next hour, I, a 78-year-old woman, began to learn how to use a smartphone. Carol patiently showed me how to open a browser and type in keywords. When the search results for 28 Elm Street redevelopment appeared, I held my breath. There were dozens of articles. The most recent one, published just 2 hours ago, was titled, "Lawyer Waits in on Abandonment Case, Criminal Charges Possible." I clicked on it. It was an interview with Miss Davis, in which she clearly stated that Julian could face charges for both elder abandonment and fraud. "My goodness," Carol gasped. "Your son could go to jail." I stared at the screen in silence, a heavy weight pressing on my chest. I had never wanted to send my son to prison. I just wanted my home and my dignity back. Just as I was about to close the page, a new notification popped up. It was a statement from the law firm where Julian worked. My finger trembled as I opened it. On the screen was an official statement saying in essence that Julian Vance's personal actions were not affiliated with the firm and that they were conducting an internal investigation. Carol slapped her thigh and laughed. "Your son's about to lose his job." But I couldn't laugh. Julian had always been a proud child. His career meant more to him than anything. If he lost his job, just then there was a knock on the door. The director was standing there with Maya and a man I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Vance," Maya said, rushing in. "This is Mr. Wallace, a legal consultant for our station. There's been a major development." Mr. Wallace nodded and pulled a document from his briefcase. "Mrs. Vance, we've obtained a court order to freeze the assets. Your house is now protected, and your son cannot proceed with any sale." I took the document, which bore the bright red seal of the court. At least the house was safe for now. And, Maya added excitedly, our reporting has caused a huge public response. The AARP and the local area agency on aging have both offered to get involved. As she was speaking, my old flip phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" I answered. "Mom," it was Julian, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk? Just you and me?" I glanced at Maya and Mr. Wallace, who gave me a subtle nod. "All right," I said. "I'll come to the home now and pick you up. We can go to a coffee shop." "That won't be necessary." I cut him off. "We'll talk here. The facility has a visiting room." After I hung up, Maya said they would step out, but could listen from the next room, just in case. "Mrs. Vance, remember, Mr. Wallace said sternly, "no matter what he says, do not sign any documents." Half an hour later, Julian appeared alone in the visiting room. He was wearing a suit, but his tie was crooked and his eyes were bloodshot. He had lost all of his usual polished demeanor. "Mom," he said as soon as he sat down, grabbing my hand. "I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." I pulled my hand away and looked at him calmly. "Wrong about what?" I shouldn't have sent you here without discussing it," he stammered. "But I really did it for your own good. You have people to take care of you here." "Julian," I interrupted, "how much is the buyout?" He froze as if he'd been struck by lightning. "What? What buyout?" $2 million, wasn't it? I looked directly into his eyes. "That's why you were in such a hurry to get me out, change the locks, and sell the house." Julian's face went from red to white, then to a sickly pale. Who told you that?" "That's not important," I shook my head. "What's important is that you forged my signature and transferred my property into your name. That's a crime, Julian." "I didn't." He shot up from his chair, which scraped loudly against the floor. "You signed it voluntarily. My eyesight is poor, and I can't read fine print, but I'm not senile," I said calmly. "The stack of papers you had me sign 5 years ago, you said they were for my pension, right?" Beads of sweat formed on Julian's forehead. He opened his mouth but couldn't make a sound. "Julian, the house was my and your father's joint property. After he passed, it should have all belonged to me. What right did you have to dispose of it?" "Mom!" He suddenly dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. It was a moment of weakness. "Please, forgive me this one time. I'll give you the house back right away. Please. Just withdraw the lawsuit. Stop the media reports. My career will be destroyed." Watching him kneel and beg, my heart felt like it was being torn in two. One half was a mother's heart, wanting to help him up and dry his tears. The other half was an awakened heart, reminding me not to make the same mistake again. "Get up," I said softly. "Adults have to take responsibility for their actions." "Those are the words I said to you when you were accepted into law school. Do you remember?" Julian slowly got to his feet, his eyes growing cold. "Mom, are you really going to destroy your own son over a stupid house?" "I'm not destroying you. You're destroying yourself." "Fine, fine." He took 2 steps back, his face contorted. "Then don't blame me for being ruthless. Do you really think the media cares about you? They just want a story. When this blows over, who's going to remember some old woman?" "Mr. Julian Vance," I said, suddenly using a formal tone, "my lawyer will be in contact with yours. Now please leave." He glared at me, then turned and slammed the door on his way out. The director and Maya immediately rushed in. "Mrs. Vance, are you all right?" Maya asked, concerned. I shook my head, suddenly feeling an immense wave of fatigue. I need to rest. Back in my room, Carol, who had already heard about the meeting, had brewed me a cup of calming chamomile tea. "A son can turn on you faster than you can flip a page in a book," she sighed. "My own son in New York is the same. Sweet as pie when he needs money, but once he gets it, he doesn't know who you are." I warmed my hands on the teacup, my thoughts swirling. Julian's final words, though hurtful, had a grain of truth. The media attention would eventually fade, and my life would have to go on. The legal process would be long. Would I have the strength to see it through? Later that evening, Maya returned with more news. "Mrs. Vance, we discovered that your son and daughter-in-law had a large financial transaction recently." She opened her notebook. 3 months ago, they purchased a condominium in the West Loop for $750,000, paid in full. I stared at her in shock. "Where did they get that kind of money?" "A loan," Maya said. "They took out a mortgage against your house." The room spun, and I nearly fainted. They didn't just want to steal my house. They used it as collateral to buy a new one for themselves. Is that legal?" I asked, trembling. "Of course not," Maya said, indignant. "Even though the deed was in his name, he obtained it through fraudulent means. Miss Davis has already filed a petition to freeze the new property as well." Just then, the facility's intercom crackled to life. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance, you have a visitor at the front desk. It's your daughter-in-law." Maya immediately became alert. "Do you want to see her?" I thought for a moment and nodded. "Let's hear what she has to say." Samantha was standing at the entrance, dressed in designer clothes that couldn't hide the haggard look on her face. She was visibly startled to see me with Maya. She forced a smile. "Mom, can I talk to you alone?" "That won't be necessary," I said coolly. "Say what you have to say right here." Samantha bit her lip. "Mom, Julian and I know we were wrong. We're willing to give the house back to you and have you come live with us." "And then what?" I cut her off. "Wait for the buyout money to come through and then ship me back here?" "No, absolutely not," she said desperately. "We can sign an agreement." "What kind of agreement?" "One where you give us a portion of the buyout money, and we take care of you for the rest of your life." Her voice grew smaller and smaller. I couldn't help but laugh. Samantha, you've been an accountant your whole life, and you're still a master of calculation. $2 million. How much do you want?" $1 million, she mumbled, unable to look me in the eye. "The other $1 million would be for your care." Maya gasped beside me. I just shook my head and started to walk away. "Mom," Samantha grabbed my arm. "If you don't agree, we'll do what?" I shook her hand off. "Threaten me with my grandson again? We'll take the child and leave this city," she shrieked hysterically. "You'll never see him again." I looked calmly at her twisted face. "Do as you please. Children grow up. One day, he'll know what kind of parents he had." Samantha completely broke down, sinking to the ground and wailing. You've ruined us. You miserable old woman, why would you do this to your own son? A security guard from the facility heard the commotion and came to escort her away. Maya held my hand tightly. Mrs. Vance, please don't let her get to you. I'm fine, I said softly. I want to see my grandson. Maya's eyes lit up. That's easy. We can go to his school. No, I shook my head. I don't want the child caught in the middle of the adults' war. We'll wait until all of this is over. That night, Action News aired its latest report. Son begs for forgiveness. DAUGHTERINL. AW issues threats as elder abandonment case escalates. The segment included footage of Julian kneeling and my confrontation with Samantha, though their faces were blurred. Before bed, I received a call from Miss Davis. There was an emergency hearing the next morning to discuss the asset freeze and the official filing of the case. She wanted me to be there. Mrs. Vance, you need to be prepared, she said cautiously. Once the case is formally filed, your son could face criminal charges. I was silent for a long time before I finally answered. Let the process take its course. He did something wrong. He needs to face the consequences. After hanging up, I looked out the window at the moonlight. In my 78 years, I never imagined I would one day take my own son to court. But it was precisely because I loved him that I could not enable his destructive behavior. Tomorrow, the law would give me back my justice, and I would give myself back my dignity. The courthouse hallway was long and cold, our footsteps echoing in the empty space. Miss Davis walked beside me, quietly explaining the procedures for the hearing. Maya and her cameraman followed, but they were stopped at security. Only the parties and their legal counsel are allowed inside, a bailiff said sternly. Miss Davis showed her identification and helped me through the metal detector. My legs felt as heavy as lead. Every step took immense courage. Just relax, Mrs. Vance, Miss Davis whispered. This is just a hearing, not the full trial. Will Julian be here? I asked softly. Yes, the court has summoned him. The hearing room was small, with a long table in the center. When we arrived, Julian was already there with his lawyer, and Samantha was with them. She's not a party to this case. Why is she here? I wondered. Julian saw me and immediately turned his head away. He was dressed impeccably in a suit, his hair perfectly combed, looking every bit the elite lawyer again, though the dark circles under his eyes betrayed his exhaustion. All rise, the clerk announced. A female judge, about 50 years old with sharp, intelligent eyes, entered. She scanned the room, and her gaze softened slightly when it rested on me. Please be seated. She opened the case file. This is the hearing for the property dispute case of Eleanor Vance versus Julian Vance. The plaintiff may begin. Miss Davis stood and succinctly laid out the facts. How I was sent to a nursing home under false pretenses, how I discovered the property had been fraudulently transferred, and the existence of the multi-million-dollar redevelopment buyout. Your Honor, Miss Davis said, presenting a stack of documents. These are the transfer documents from the county recorder's office. A forensic analysis has confirmed that Mrs. Vance's signature was forged. Furthermore, the defendant used this property to secure a loan of $500,000 to purchase a new condominium, which constitutes fraud. The judge read the documents, her frown deepening. Julian fidgeted, constantly whispering to his lawyer. Does the defendant have anything to say? The judge finally asked. Julian's lawyer, a smarmy-looking middle-aged man, stood up. Your Honor, my client completely denies these allegations. The property transfer was agreed upon by Mrs. Vance 5 years ago. There was a witness. What witness? The judge cut him off. My client's wife, Samantha Vance. The judge let out a cold snort. His wife as a witness? Counsel, how many years have you been practicing? You're making rookie mistakes. The lawyer's forehead broke out in a sweat. Your Honor, Enough. The judge turned to Julian. Mr. Vance, your mother alleges that you forcibly sent her to a nursing home and changed the locks. Is this true? Julian stood, his voice trembling. Your Honor, I did it for her own good. She's elderly. It's not safe for her to live alone. So you made the decision for her? The judge asked icily. Without even informing her? The judge then turned to me. Mrs. Vance, what is your desired outcome? I took a deep breath and stood up. I want my house back. I want the illegal property transfer reversed. And I want a public apology from my son and daughter-in-law. Mom, Julian cried out, losing his composure. Are you really trying to ruin me? Silence. The judge banged her gavel. Given the complexity of this case, the court has decided as follows. 1. The asset freeze on the property will be maintained. 2. The county recorder's office is ordered to re-verify the authenticity of the transfer documents. 3. A social worker will be appointed to assess Mrs. Vance's living situation and capacity. We will reconvene in 2 weeks. As we left the courtroom, Julian rushed up to me. You won, Mom. Are you satisfied? My career is over. Julian, I said wearily, if you had been honest with me from the beginning, it never would have come to this. Mrs. Vance, his lawyer interjected, we are willing to settle. We'll give you the house back, and we split the buyout money 50-50. How about it? Miss Davis immediately stepped in front of me. My client will not accept any private settlement. We will wait for the court's judgment. Outside the courthouse, Maya and her cameraman were waiting. A crowd of other reporters swarmed toward us, flashes blinding me. Mrs. Vance, what was the judge's decision? Miss Davis, is it true the defendant could face criminal charges? Mrs. Vance, why would your son do this to you? The questions came like a tidal wave. Miss Davis shielded me as we pushed through the crowd to a waiting car. When I got back to Maple Creek, I found several reporters camped out by the entrance. The director greeted me with a troubled expression. Principal Vance, we've been getting calls from reporters all morning. I understand, I said apologetically. I'm sorry for the trouble. No trouble at all, the director said, suddenly emotional. All of us seniors here support you. My father saw the news and said you're speaking up for all the elderly parents who have been wronged by their children. His reaction took me by surprise. Back in my room, Carol was watching the noon news. Look, they're talking about your case. On the screen, a legal expert was providing commentary. This is more than a family dispute. It's a critical issue of elder rights protection. If the property transfer is proven to be a forgery, the party responsible could face serious criminal penalties. The phone rang. It was Miss Davis. Mrs. Vance, good news. The AARP and the Area Agency on Aging have offered to fully fund your legal costs. Also, the public response to the Action News story has been overwhelming. More than a dozen media outlets want to interview you. I declined further interviews, accepting only Maya's offer for exclusive follow-ups. That afternoon, she brought a wonderful surprise. A social worker was scheduled to visit the next day to assess my situation. This would determine my eligibility to return home. Mrs. Vance, Maya said excitedly, if you pass the assessment, you could be home very soon. Home. The word brought a sting to my eyes. That house, so full of memories. Could I really go back? And even if I did, without my husband, estranged from my son, what meaning would it have? That night, I couldn't sleep. In the early hours of the morning, my phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Grandma, a small, young voice whispered. It's Leo. My heart nearly stopped. Leo. Sweetheart, how did you? I snuck Mom's phone, my grandson whispered. Grandma, I saw you on TV. Mom and Dad said you were crazy, but I knew they weren't telling the truth. Tears streamed down my face. Leo, all the kids at school, their grandparents said you were right. It continued. Grandma, I miss you. I miss you too, I sobbed. When this is all over, Grandma will come see you, okay? I saved my allowance money. I can take a taxi to see you, the innocent child said. Good night, Grandma. The line suddenly went dead. I clutched the phone, my tears flowing freely. In this whole world, at least there was one person who truly loved me, and that was enough. The next morning, 2 social workers came to Maple Creek. One was a gentle, middle-aged woman, the other a young man. They asked detailed questions about my health, my daily activities, and even gave me a simple cognitive test. Mrs. Vance, you are perfectly capable of living independently, the female social worker concluded. We will recommend to the court that you should return to your own home. Shortly after they left, Maya rushed in. Mrs. Vance, huge news. The county recorder's office confirmed the signature on the transfer document was forged. The court has issued a warrant for his arrest. The teacup in my hand nearly fell. A warrant? For Julian? Yes. For forgery and fraud, Maya said, a mix of excitement and unease in her voice. The police could arrive at any moment. Her words were cut off by the sound of sirens outside the facility. We rushed to the window and saw 2 police cars pull up. Several officers got out. My heart pounded and my legs felt weak. As much as Julian deserved it as a mother, I couldn't bear the thought of seeing my son in handcuffs. Mrs. Vance? Maya looked at me with concern. I'm fine, I took a deep breath. He did something wrong. He has to be punished, even if he is my son. However, the police didn't come for me. They went to the director's office and left 10 minutes later. The director came to tell me himself. Principal Vance, the police just informed us. Your son, Julian Vance, has already turned himself in. The news of Julian's surrender sent ripples through my life. Maya immediately contacted the police and confirmed that Julian, accompanied by his lawyer, had indeed turned himself in and was currently out on bail. Mrs. Vance, she said, holding my hand, this means the case will now proceed as a criminal matter. Your civil property dispute might have to wait until the criminal case is resolved. I nodded, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. On one hand, I wanted my house back as soon as possible. On the other, as a mother, I didn't want my son to actually go to prison. What does Miss Davis say? I asked. She says the criminal case should move quickly, a month at most before it goes to trial, Maya said, checking her notes. At the same time, the social worker's report has been submitted to the court. You can go home any time. Go home? That word struck a chord in my heart again. Without my husband, estranged from my son, would that house still feel like a home? I want to wait, I finally said. Wait until this is all settled. Maya nodded in understanding and didn't press. After she left, Carol came and sat beside me. Worried about living alone? It's not that, I shook my head. It's just that house holds so many memories, good ones and bad ones. I need to be ready. That evening, the facility hosted a movie night. I didn't want to go, but Carol insisted. They were showing an old movie, a classic family drama about children caring for their aging parents. As I watched, tears began to stream down my face. Back in my room, my phone showed 5 missed calls, all from the same unknown number. As I was about to call back, it rang again. Hello? Mom, it was Julian, his voice as raw as sandpaper. Can I see you? Right now. I glanced at the clock. It was 9:30 in the evening. It's so late. Please, he choked out. I'm right outside the building, just for 10 minutes. I hesitated, then finally agreed. The main doors were locked, so I had to slip out through the fire escape. Julian was standing under a streetlight, his shadow stretching long and thin behind him. He looked like he had aged 10 years in just a few days, his face unshaven, and his eyes red and swollen. Mom, he said, tears immediately filling his eyes. I'm ruined. My law license will probably be suspended. All my clients are gone. Samantha says she's going to divorce me. I watched him quietly, saying nothing. Mom, I know I was wrong. He fell to his knees, clutching my legs. I really know I was wrong. Please, save me. You're the only one who can save me. How can I save you? I asked softly. You tell the police that you knew about the transfer, that you let me sign your name for you, he said desperately. That way, the charges won't stick. I pushed him away and took a step back. Julian, you're still lying. Mom, I'm not lying. I did it. I did it for Leo, he cried hysterically. If I go to jail, how will he ever hold his head up? And when you did all those things, were you thinking about Leo? I asked coldly. Were you thinking about your mother? Julian was speechless, kneeling on the cold pavement, trembling. The night wind tousled his hair, revealing a few premature gray strands. My heart softened for a moment. He was still my son, the baby I had carried for 9 months. Julian, I knelt down to his level. Go and confess. Honestly face up to your mistakes. That's the only way you can start over. Mom, he was crying now. You really won't help me. I am helping you, I said firmly. I'm helping you find your conscience. He suddenly shot to his feet, his eyes turning vicious. Fine, fine. I see how it is. You never loved me. All you care about is that stupid house and the money. I didn't argue. I just turned and walked back toward the nursing home. Behind me, I could hear Julian's hysterical shouts. You'll regret this, you cold-blooded old woman. I didn't sleep at all that night. Just as the sky was beginning to lighten, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Miss Davis. Mrs. Vance, emergency court hearing at 9 o'clock this morning regarding your return home. Please be ready. I dragged my exhausted body out of bed. The woman in the mirror had puffy eyes and deeper wrinkles. My 78 years had never felt so heavy. Maya arrived on time to pick me up, explaining the day's proceedings. The court, based on the social worker's report, would decide if I could move back home and discuss the temporary disposition of the house. Mrs. Vance, she hesitated. There's something else. Your daughter-in-law, Samantha, has filed for divorce. I was stunned for a moment, then gave a bitter smile. To protect her share of the assets. Most likely, Maya agreed. She's claiming to have known nothing about the property transfer. In court, Samantha was indeed there, dressed modestly, a stark contrast to her usual flashy style. She even walked up to me, her eyes red-rimmed. Mom, I'm so sorry. I ignored her performance. The judge quickly called the session to order and approved my return home, appointing a social worker for regular follow-up visits. As for the property, because it was tied to a criminal case, the final resolution would have to wait. Mrs. Vance, the judge said kindly, you may return to your home at any time. The court will notify building management to assist you in changing the locks. As we left, Samantha blocked my path. Mom, Julian and I are getting a divorce. Could you put in a good word for me? About what? I asked coolly. The new condo. It was purchased with a mortgage against the old house, she stammered. If the house is returned to you, then the new place. Samantha, I cut her off. Your business with Julian is your own to solve. I will not lie for anyone. Her face turned ashen. You miserable old woman, she hissed. You've ruined my life. A bailiff stepped in before she could continue. I just shook my head and walked away. Once, I had almost thought of this woman as a daughter. Now, we were strangers. Back at Maple Creek, I began to pack my things. Though the court said I could go home immediately, I decided to wait one more day to say a proper goodbye to my friends there. I'm really going to miss you, Carol said, helping me fold my clothes. But I'm so happy you're going home. Come visit me when you can. I held her hand. The persimmon tree in my yard should have fruit this year. That evening, the nursing home held a small farewell party for me. The director gave me a bouquet of flowers, and the chef specially prepared my favorite baked salmon. These people, who were not my family, had shown me more warmth than my own son and daughter-in-law. The next morning, Maya and Miss Davis came to pick me up. Miss Davis brought the latest legal documents, including the notice unfreezing the property and the contact information for a locksmith. Mrs. Vance, she said cautiously, the police were collecting evidence at your house. It might be a bit of a mess. You should be prepared. I nodded. I could already picture it. The car slowly turned onto my familiar street. Not much had changed in the months I'd been away. The trees were taller. Some new neighbors had moved in. 28 Elm Street, my home. Finally, it was in sight. But the scene before me made me gasp. The front fence was broken, the flower beds had been dug up, and the roses I had so carefully cultivated were all gone. The front door was scarred with the remnants of police tape, and the windows were caked with grime. Mrs. Vance. Maya looked at me with concern. I'm fine. I took a deep breath. They're just flowers. They can be replanted. The locksmith quickly changed the lock and handed me 2 brand-new keys. With a trembling hand, I pushed open the door to my home. The inside was in chaos. A thick layer of dust covered everything. Paintings had been taken down and stacked in a corner. The floor was covered in footprints. But what broke my heart was my husband's study. It had been completely emptied. His treasured books and collections were all gone. Did they sell everything? I asked, my voice choked with emotion. Miss Davis looked around. The police likely took some items as evidence. The rest was probably disposed of by your son. I walked slowly through each room, my heart sinking lower and lower. The closet in the master bedroom was open, more than half of my clothes gone. In the kitchen, the ceramic stew pot I had used for decades was missing. Even the towel rack in the bathroom had been ripped off the wall. Those vultures? Maya cursed under her breath. They didn't even spare an old woman's personal belongings. I sat down on the dusty sofa and noticed something glinting in the corner. I walked over and picked it up. It was my wedding photograph. The glass was shattered, but the picture was intact. In it, our younger selves were smiling, so full of happiness. Miss H. Davis, I said, clutching the photo tightly. I'm going to see this through to the end. Not just for the house, but for the 50 years of memories my husband and I built here. Miss Davis nodded solemnly. We will do everything in our power. Over the next few days, with the help of a few kind neighbors, I slowly began to clean the house. Old Mr. Henderson from next door fixed my fence. Mrs. Gable from across the street brought me seedlings from her own garden. The young couple who had just moved in even helped me wash all the curtains. Mrs. Vance, Mrs. Gable said as she wiped down a window, you have no idea. Your son was bringing people by every day to see the house, talking about getting a good price for it. We all knew something wasn't right, but it was a family matter. I patted her hand. I understand, and I thank you for your help now. A week later, the house was mostly back in order. I rehung my husband's photograph, planted the new seedlings in the garden, and even bought a new stew pot, identical to the old one. On the surface, life seemed to be returning to normal. But every night, I would wake up from nightmares, dreaming of Julian screaming at me, of Samantha's contorted face, of Leo crying and asking me why I didn't want him anymore. One morning, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw an unexpected visitor, my grandson, Leo, standing alone on the porch. His school uniform was dirty, and there were tear stains on his face. Grandma, the moment I opened the door, he threw himself into my arms. I skipped school. Mom and Dad are fighting every day. I can't take it anymore. I held my grandson tightly, feeling his small body tremble. Leo was only 10, yet he was being forced to bear the ugliness of the adult world. Sweetheart, don't be afraid. I stroked his hair. Grandma's here. Leo looked up, his eyes filled with tears. Grandma, is Dad really going to jail? The kids at school say he's a bad person. My heart ached. How do you explain to a child that the father he loves has broken the law? How do you tell the truth without hurting him? Leo, I sat him down on the sofa. Do you know what it means to make a mistake? The boy nodded. Like when I cheated on my spelling test. Yes, I said softly. Your dad made a much bigger mistake, so he might have to face a punishment. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you, and it doesn't mean he's a bad person. It just means he did a bad thing. Leo looked at me, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. Then why is Mom talking about a divorce? She said Dad is broke and doesn't want us anymore. Samantha. I cursed her selfishness in my mind. How could she say such a thing to a child? Your mom is wrong, I said firmly. No matter what happens, your dad and Mom both love you. And Grandma loves you. Leo leaned against me, his crying slowly subsiding. I made him his favorite grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup and watched him devour it. Grandma, can I live here with you? He asked suddenly. I don't want to go home. My heart warmed, but I had to be rational. Sweetheart, Grandma would love that more than anything. But you're still young, and you need to be with your parents. But you can come visit me as often as you like, okay? Just then, the doorbell rang frantically. Through the window, I saw Samantha standing on the porch, her face pale with fury. Leo, she shrieked the moment I opened the door. How dare you skip school? Do you know how worried I was? The child hid behind me in fear. Samantha lunged for his arm. Come home with me. Samantha, I stepped between them. Be gentle with the child. He's been through enough. What business is it of yours? She glared at me. This is all your fault. Julian is going to prison, and you're satisfied, aren't you? He broke the law, and he has to face the consequences, I said calmly. But Leo is innocent. If you need help taking care of him, spare me the fake sympathy, she snarled, pulling Leo towards the door. And you are not to come here again. Do you hear me? Leo was dragged out, but he looked back at me, and the look in his eyes broke my heart. The door slammed shut, leaving the house in silence again. All that was left was a single muddy footprint on the floor, proof that my grandson had been there. I knelt down and gently wiped it away, just as I had once wiped away the footprints Julian left behind. History has a way of repeating itself, but this time I would not suffer in silence. The ringing of the phone broke the quiet. It was Miss Davis. Mrs. Vance, good news. The court has decided to expedite your son's case. The trial is scheduled for next week. At the same time, the county recorder's office has begun the process of reversing the illegal property transfer. So soon? I was surprised. There's a lot of public pressure, Miss Davis explained. And your son has shown remorse and a willingness to cooperate, which might lead to a lighter sentence. He's cooperating? So Julian had finally faced reality. I breathed a sigh of relief. At least he wasn't completely lost. Mrs. Vance, there's one more thing, Miss Davis hesitated. Your daughter-in-law, in her divorce filing, has requested sole custody of your grandson and a restriction on your visitation rights. What? I gripped the phone. She's trying to keep me from seeing him? Yes. Her reason is that you encouraged the child to skip school and that you are a negative influence, Miss Davis said with a sigh. However, such requests are rarely granted. After hanging up, I stood by the window, looking at the new seedlings in the garden. Just when life seemed to be getting better, it had dealt me another blow. But 78 years of life had taught me that there is no obstacle that cannot be overcome. The next day, I went to Leo's school. His teacher, Mr. Clark, had been one of my former students and greeted me warmly. Principal Vance, he said, shaking my hand. Leo skipped school yesterday to find you, didn't he? His mother was furious. She almost transferred him to another school. Mr. Clark, I said earnestly, I need to ask you for a favor. If Leo has any problems at school, please call me first. He readily agreed and told me that Leo's grades had been slipping, and he was often distracted in class. The boy has a lot on his mind, he said sympathetically. I'll keep a closer eye on him. And you take care of yourself, Principal Vance. On my way home, I stopped at the grocery store. As I was waiting in line to check out, a familiar figure made me freeze. It was Julian, pushing a half-full shopping cart filled with instant noodles and frozen dinners. He saw me too. We stood there, looking at each other across the bustling aisle, neither of us speaking first. Finally, I gave a small nod, a silent greeting. He suddenly pushed his cart toward me. Mom, he said, his voice hoarse. I moved out. Samantha kicked me out of the house. I then noticed the dark circles under his eyes and his wrinkled shirt. The once dapper, successful lawyer now looked like a homeless man. Where are you staying? I couldn't help but ask. A friend's sofa, he said with a bitter smile. All my clients are gone. The firm suspended my license. Mom, I really know I was wrong. I didn't respond. I just silently took half of the fresh vegetables and meat from my cart and put them in his. Take these, I said softly. You can't live on instant noodles. Julian's eyes suddenly reddened. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. There, in the middle of the grocery store, my son stood by a display of potato chips and sobbed. A few shoppers glanced over, but I no longer cared what anyone thought. The trial is next week, I said, handing him a tissue. What are you going to plead? Guilty, he said, wiping his eyes. My lawyer says because I turned myself in and am making restitution, I might get probation. Restitution. I learned then that he had sold his new car and expensive watches to pay back part of the loan. And the house? The process to return it to you has started, he said, looking down. As for the buyout money, I don't want a penny of it. It's all yours. I let out a long sigh. Julian, Money isn't the most important thing. What's important is that you finally understand where you went wrong." He nodded in shame, looking like a little boy who had been caught breaking a window. For a moment, I saw him as a child again, terrified after some minor transgression. "Mom," he hesitated, Can I come visit you sometimes?" I didn't answer right away. Forgiveness was one thing. Rebuilding trust was another. But seeing the hope in his eyes, mixed with the fear of rejection, I couldn't bring myself to refuse completely. "Let's wait until your case is over," I finally said. After we checked out, we said goodbye at the store entrance. Julian walked away, carrying his plastic bags, his back hunched. He looked nothing like the elite lawyer he once was. I didn't know if he had truly changed, but at least he had begun to pay the price for his mistakes. When I got home, I had a call from Maya. Action News wanted to do a follow-up story on my life after returning home. "Mrs. Vance, our viewers are very concerned about you," she said warmly, "especially the other seniors who have had similar experiences." I politely declined. The media attention had served its purpose. Now, what I needed was peace, a chance to reconnect with my grandson, and perhaps a chance to give my son an opportunity to start over. That evening, I sat in the yard I had just begun to restore, watching the sunset. I was in the rocking chair my husband had loved, and I could almost feel him there beside me. On the table was today's paper. The headline read, "Lawyer Forgery, Case Heads to Trial Next Week. Elder Rights Become Public Focus." I didn't open it. Instead, I picked up my phone and called Mr. Clark. "Mr. Clark, tomorrow. Would it be all right if I picked Leo up from school? I'd like to take him for some ice cream." Life had to go on. At 78, I still had a long road ahead of me, but at least now, I had my home back. And I had found the courage to say no. On the day of the trial, the sky was a dreary, uniform gray. I woke early and put on a navy blue suit, a gift from my husband on our 10th wedding anniversary. The old woman in the mirror had a determined look in her eye, a far cry from the frightened woman who had first been cast out of her home. Miss Davis arrived on time, with Maya in tow. She had become one of the young people I trusted most. "Nervous, Mrs. Vance?" Maya asked softly in the car. I shook my head. At 78, there isn't much left to be afraid of. The courthouse was already swarming with reporters. When our car pulled up, they surrounded us, flashes popping. "Mrs. Vance, will you forgive your son today?" "Miss Davis, what's the expected verdict?" "Mrs. Vance, what will you do with the buyout money?" Miss Davis shielded me as we pushed through the crowd, while Maya expertly handled the reporters' questions. Inside, I saw Julian immediately. He was wearing an ill-fitting old suit, a public defender by his side. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Samantha wasn't there. Maya had told me she was busy with her divorce proceedings, trying to secure as much of their assets as she could. "All rise." The judge entered, and the trial began. The prosecutor laid out the charges: forgery, fraud, and elder abandonment. As the evidence was presented, the atmosphere in the courtroom grew heavy. "Mr. Vance, how do you respond to these charges?" the judge asked. Julian stood slowly, his voice hoarse. I plead guilty." A murmur went through the spectators. The judge banged her gavel for order. However, Julian suddenly looked up, his eyes darting around, regarding the property transfer. My mother was aware of it. Her eyesight was poor, so she asked me to sign for her. I clenched my fists. Even now, he was still lying. "Objection," the prosecutor stood. "The defendant has previously admitted to forging the signature. To recant now is a clear attempt to evade responsibility." The judge frowned. "Mr. Vance, do you have any proof that Mrs. Vance was aware of this?" Julian stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. His public defender tried to intervene. "Your Honor, my client is under extreme stress." "Your Honor," I stood up, my voice trembling with anger. "May I say something?" After receiving permission, I took an old notebook from my bag. This was my husband's journal. This is the last entry he wrote, a week before he passed away. The courtroom fell silent. "Eleanor's eyes are getting worse," I read, my voice catching. Took her to get new reading glasses today. The doctor said her cataracts need to be dealt with soon, but we don't have the money. Julian needs a down payment for his first house, so we gave him our savings. I hope the boy remembers what his parents have done for him. I paused, composing myself. After my husband died, I never looked at this journal again. I only found it last week while sorting through his things. I handed the journal to the bailiff, who gave it to the judge. After reading it, the judge's expression turned severe. "Mr. Vance," she said coldly, "your father's journal makes it clear that your parents gave you everything, and you, in return, not only showed no gratitude but deceived your aging mother and stole her home. Do you have anything else to say?" Julian's face was ashen. His legs gave out, and he collapsed into his chair. The prosecutor pressed his advantage, presenting more evidence. Bank records showing Julian had used the house as collateral for the loan on the new condo. Testimony from a real estate agent confirming he was trying to sell the house quickly and below market value. And even a statement from a staff member at Maple Creek, describing the demeaning way I was dropped off. "Your Honor," the prosecutor concluded, "the defendant's actions are not only illegal, they are a betrayal of fundamental human decency. We recommend the maximum penalty to serve as a deterrent to others." When it was the defense's turn, the public defender could only weakly argue that Julian was a first-time offender who had confessed and returned some of the funds. After a short recess, the judge returned to deliver the verdict. My palms were sweating. This court finds the defendant, Julian Vance, guilty of forgery, for which he is sentenced to 1 year, suspended for 2 years. Guilty of fraud, for which he is sentenced to 2 years, suspended for 3 years. And guilty of elder abandonment, for which he is sentenced to 6 months. The sentences are to be served concurrently, for a total of 3 years, suspended for 4 years. The courtroom buzzed again. A suspended sentence meant Julian wouldn't go to prison immediately, but if he committed another crime during his probation, he would serve the full term. Furthermore, the judge continued, "The defendant is ordered to immediately facilitate the return of the property at 28 Elm Street to its rightful owner, his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. The compensation from the redevelopment buyout is to be awarded in its entirety to Mrs. Vance. The defendant has no claim to any portion of these funds." After the verdict, reporters rushed out to file their stories. I sat at the plaintiff's table, completely drained. The months of fighting were finally over. "Mrs. Vance." Maya held my trembling arm. "Are you all right?" I nodded, unable to speak. My gaze drifted across the courtroom, and I saw Julian being led away by a bailiff. He looked back at me, his expression a complex mix of emotions that tore at my heart. Outside the courthouse, the sun was blinding. "Miss Davis told me the property transfer would be completed within a week, and the city redevelopment office was ready with the compensation agreement, just waiting for my signature. You won, Mrs. Vance," she said with a smile. "No." I shook my head. "There are no winners here. My son is a convicted felon. My family is broken. What kind of victory is that?" Back at the house, I sat in the rocking chair on the porch. The new flowers I had planted were beginning to bloom. Neighbors, hearing the verdict, came by to congratulate me, but I just wanted to be alone. That evening the doorbell rang. It was Julian, holding a plastic bag, standing awkwardly on the doorstep. I took a deep breath and opened the door. We stood there, mother and son, separated by the threshold, neither speaking. "Mom," he finally broke the silence. I came to get some of my things." I stepped aside and let him in. He walked cautiously, as if afraid to disturb something. I could hardly recognize the stooped figure as my once proud son. "Your things are in the guest room," I said. He nodded and went to the room, returning a few minutes later with a suitcase. He stood in the middle of the living room, wanting to say something but not knowing how. "The judge gave you probation," I said, breaking the silence. "Make the most of that chance." "Mom," his voice was choked. I'm sorry. You already said that in court." "No, I mean it." He suddenly fell to his knees. "When I saw Dad's journal, I didn't know. I didn't know how much you both gave up for me. I turned away so he wouldn't see the tears in my eyes." "What's the use in saying that now?" "I know it's no use," he sobbed. "But I want you to know, I'm going to change. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Get up, I said softly. Don't let a child see his father kneeling. Julian slowly stood, wiping his tears. How is Leo? You should ask Samantha, I said coolly. She won't let me see him. His expression grew complicated. Mom, the divorce. I'm probably going to lose custody. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't let it show. That's between the two of you. He nodded and picked up his suitcase. At the door, he stopped. Mom, whether you believe it or not, I love you. The door closed, and his footsteps faded away. I stood by the window, watching my son's silhouette disappear into the twilight. 78 years had taught me that love and hurt are often two sides of the same coin. The property transfer went smoothly. A week later, I held a new deed with only my name on it. The same day, the redevelopment office called to schedule the signing of the compensation agreement. Mrs. S. Vance, the director said warmly, the final assessment on your house came in at $5,200,000, a little higher than we expected. I thanked him, but after hanging up, I felt a profound emptiness. No amount of money could buy back a whole family, a son's devotion, or my husband's life. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a lavender dress my husband had loved and styled my hair. It was my small act of defiance, a statement that a 78-year-old woman could still live with dignity. Miss Davis and Maya were waiting for me at the city office. Mrs. Vance, Maya said, jogging over to help me. Today is a big day. The director, a kind, middle-aged man named Mr. Harris, personally showed us the redevelopment plans. Mrs. Vance, he said respectfully, your property will become part of a new community park. Your lot, specifically, is where the new senior activity center will be built. In a way, your home will continue to serve the community. The thought warmed my heart. My husband had loved having neighbors over for coffee in the yard. He would have been so happy to know our home would become a gathering place for even more seniors. Mr. Harris, we're ready to begin, Miss Davis said, opening her briefcase. Just as we were about to sign, the office door burst open. Samantha stormed in, high heels clicking on the floor, a man in a suit trailing behind her. Wait a minute, she shrieked. I have a claim to this property. Mr. Harris stood up, surprised. Ma'am, who are you? I'm Julian Vance's wife, Samantha announced, her chin held high. Under marital law, half of this property is mine. Her lawyer handed Mr. Harris a business card. My client is entitled to a portion of the redevelopment compensation. The office was silent. I glanced at Miss Davis, who had a wry smile on her face. Miss Vance, Mr. Harris said, looking at the file. The deed is solely in Mrs. Eleanor Vance's name, and the court has already ruled. That was between her and Julian, Samantha interrupted. Julian and I are not divorced yet. I may not be responsible for his debts, but I have a right to his assets. That's enough. Miss Davis suddenly stood up and pulled a document from her briefcase. This is the divorce decree, finalized just yesterday. Miss Vance, surely you haven't forgotten already? Samantha's face went white. She snatched the document and scanned it, her hand trembling. This is impossible. The final hearing wasn't supposed to be until next week. Didn't your lawyer inform you? Miss Davis said coolly. Mr. Julian Vance signed an agreement yesterday afternoon, conceding to all of your divorce terms, including relinquishing custody and any claim to marital assets. The divorce is final. Seeing Samantha's devastated expression, I suddenly understood what Julian had done. This was his way of cutting off her last hope of getting any of the buyout money. You all conspired against me, Samantha screamed hysterically. You miserable old woman, you've ruined my life. Mr. Harris called security to escort her out. Her lawyer awkwardly gathered his things and scurried after her. Mrs. Vance, I apologize for that scene, Mr. Harris said. Shall we continue? I signed the papers. $5,200,000 would be deposited into my account within 10 business days. Walking out of the building, the sunlight was bright. Mrs. Vance, Maya hesitated. Are you going to help your son? He has nothing now. I looked at the sky. Everyone has to pay the price for their choices. Julian is an adult. He needs to learn to stand on his own 2 feet. When I got home, I was surprised to find a small figure standing on my porch. It was Leo, his backpack on, tear tracks on his face. "Grandma!" he cried, rushing into my arms. "Mom said I couldn't see you, but I ran away. I held him tight." "Sweetheart, how did you get here?" "I remembered the way," he said proudly. "I took 3 different buses. A 10-year-old boy, crossing half the city by himself to find me. My heart ached." "What about your parents?" "They just fight all the time," Leo said, looking down. "Dad sleeps on the sofa. Mom said she's going to send me to boarding school. Grandma, can I please live with you?" I knelt down and looked him in the eyes. "Sweetheart, I want that more than anything. But legally, you need to be with a parent." "But they don't want me." Leo burst into tears. "Mom called me a burden, and Dad just drinks all day. You're the only one who's nice to me." My heart shattered. I picked up my grandson, a decision solidifying in my mind. It was time to fight for visitation rights, for Leo, and for myself. I called Leo's school to let them know he was with me. His teacher, Mr. Clark, was relieved. He said Samantha had been frantically searching and had almost called the police. "Principal Vance," he lowered his voice. "Leo has been very unstable lately. He broke down crying in class yesterday. I think he's better off with you." I made Leo his favorite pot roast. Watching him eat, I felt a pang of guilt. How long had it been since this child had a proper meal? The doorbell rang shrilly. It was Samantha, her makeup streaked, her eyes red and swollen. "Leo," she screamed as she barged in. "I know you're in here." Leo dropped his fork and hid behind me. I opened the door. "Samantha, calm down. You're scaring him." "How dare you take my son?" she shrieked. "I'm calling the police. This is kidnapping." "Grandma didn't kidnap me." Leo suddenly stepped out from behind me. "I came here by myself. I don't want to go home with you." Samantha froze, then her face contorted with rage. "You little brat. After all I've done for you." She reached for him, but I blocked her. "Samantha," I said sternly, "watch your tone in front of the child." She stopped, then suddenly crumpled to the floor, sobbing. "Everyone is against me. Julian left me. My son doesn't want me. What's the point of living?" Leo tentatively walked over and patted her on the back. "Mom, don't cry." Seeing them, my heart softened. Whatever her faults, she was still Leo's mother. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Have some tea." Samantha came in, and Leo dutifully poured her a glass of water. She held it like a lost child. "Samantha," I said gently, "I know you're hurting, but don't take it out on the boy." "Mrs. Vance," she looked up, her mascara running. "I'm at the end of my rope. I lost my job, the money's gone, even my son." "You still have your parents," I suggested. "You could go home for a while." "Home?" She gave a bitter laugh. "My father said he'd break my legs if I came back after the divorce." This woman, who had schemed and calculated, was now utterly alone. "Leo's education fund," I said suddenly. "I will set up an account and deposit money every month, specifically for his schooling." Samantha stared at me. You'd do that for us?" "Not for you. For Leo," I clarified. "The child is innocent." She bowed her head, tears dripping onto the floor. "Thank you, Mrs. Vance. And," I continued, "I want to see Leo twice a week, one weekend day and one evening during the week." Samantha was silent for a long time, then finally nodded. "Okay, you're better to him than I am." It was late when Samantha left with Leo. Before they went, he gave me a tight hug. "Grandma, can I stay over on the weekend?" "Of course, sweetheart." I kissed his forehead. "You're always welcome." After they left, I sat in the quiet living room. The Samantha I saw today was not a schemer, but a broken, desperate mother. Perhaps this was who she truly was all along. The phone rang, startling me. It was Maya. "Mrs. Vance, you'll never guess. The AARP saw our reports. They want to invite you to be a national ambassador for elder rights protection." I was stunned. "Me? What could an old woman like me do?" "Share your story. Help more seniors like you, Maya said enthusiastically. And the Legal Aid Foundation wants you to give guest lectures to teach other seniors how to use the law to protect themselves. Holding the phone, I felt a long-forgotten sense of purpose. At 78, maybe life was just beginning. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll do it. My first lecture was at a local community center. I was so nervous my palms were sweating. Maya came to help me with the projector, and Miss Davis stopped by to offer support. Just relax, Mrs. Vance, Maya said. Think of them as your students, just like when you were a principal. The room was filled with gray-haired seniors. Their expectant faces reminded me of my students at Lincoln Elementary. Hello, my friends, I began, my voice trembling slightly. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I am a retired elementary school teacher. As I spoke, I began to relax. I saw people taking notes when I explained legal protections. I saw them wiping away tears when I shared my own story. Our generation, I concluded, we give everything for our children, but we often forget our own rights and our own dignity. Please remember, loving your children does not mean losing yourself. Setting clear boundaries and planning for your own future is the greatest gift you can give them. Afterward, I was surrounded by people. An old man leaning on a cane grabbed my hand. Mrs. Vance, my son tricked me out of my house, too. What should I do? Miss Davis immediately gave him the contact information for legal aid. In that moment, I understood the meaning of my ordeal. My pain could be transformed into strength for others. My life became surprisingly busy. Twice a week, I gave lectures. The rest of the time, I worked with the AARP to create a new elder rights handbook. Maya helped me set up a social media page to share legal tips and life advice. The followers grew to over 10,000. Mrs. Vance, you're an influencer, she laughed. I just shook my head. Call it what you want, as long as it helps people. After the buyout money came through, I did 3 things. First, I established a trust for Leo's education. Second, I made a large donation to the community for the new senior center. Third, I bought a small condominium in a retirement community for myself. The day before my old house was scheduled for demolition, I went back one last time. Standing in the empty rooms, memories flooded back. My husband cooking in the kitchen, Julian playing with blocks on the living room floor, even Samantha on her first visit, smiling shyly. Goodbye, old house, I whispered, touching the walls. Thank you for sheltering us for so many years. As I was leaving, I saw Julian standing in the yard. He was thinner, but his eyes were clear. Mom, he said softly, I came to help you move the last of the boxes. I nodded and didn't refuse. We worked in silence, packing the last few odds and ends. Found a job? I asked. Yeah. A paralegal at a friend's small firm, he said with a wry smile. With my license suspended, I just do paperwork. It's a start, I said. When we were done, he insisted on carrying the boxes to my car. Mom, he said, pausing. I rented a small apartment. It's near your new place. If you ever need anything, just call. Seeing the sincerity in his eyes, I felt for the first time that he had truly changed. All right, I said softly. Come over for dinner sometime. The simple invitation made his eyes well up. He gave me a clumsy hug and then turned and walked away quickly so I wouldn't see his tears. Life in the retirement community was comfortable. My little condo had a sunny balcony overlooking a garden. Most of my neighbors were retired professionals, and the atmosphere was pleasant and respectful. Every Wednesday and Saturday, Leo would visit. We'd do homework or I'd take him to the park. The smile returned to his face, and his grades improved. Samantha had moved down south to work in a relative's factory. She had signed over full custody of Leo to Julian. It was perhaps her final act of kindness. One rainy night, the doorbell rang. It was almost 10 o'clock. Through the peephole, I saw Julian, soaked to the bone, but carefully shielding a paper bag in his hands. Mom, he said breathlessly when I opened the door, I saw your light was on. They just made a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies at the bakery. I know they're your favorite. I took the bag. The cookies were still warm. Rain dripped from Julian's hair onto the welcome mat. Come in and dry off, I said, stepping aside. You can't go out in a storm like this. He hesitated in the doorway. "No, I just wanted to drop these off." "Julian," I sighed, "this is your home too. You are always welcome here." It was as if my words unlocked something inside him. He fell to his knees in the doorway and wept. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I knelt down and stroked his wet hair. "Get up. It's all in the past." Julian stayed the night on the sofa. We talked late into the night about his remorse, his plans for the future. He no longer hated Samantha. He was grateful to her for showing him the truth about himself. "Mom," he said before he left, "I want to get my license back, and this time I want to specialize in elder law." I smiled and nodded. The son who had fallen and picked himself back up was more impressive to me than the successful hollow man he had been before. Time passed. At the community's annual fall festival, I was named Most Vibrant Senior and was asked to give a speech. Standing on the stage, looking out at the sea of white hair and at Julian and Leo who had come just for this, my heart was full of gratitude. "At 78, some people call this your twilight years," I said into the microphone. "But for me, it feels like a new dawn. I want to thank everyone who helped me, and I want to thank those who hurt me. You all taught me that age is not an excuse for weakness, but a badge of wisdom." The applause was thunderous. Leo jumped up and down, clapping, while Julian, his eyes red, gave me a thumbs up. Afterward, the three of us went out for a nice Italian dinner. Leo chattered about school, Julian kept our plates full, and I soaked in the simple joy of being with my family. "Grandma," Leo asked suddenly, "do you think I can be a lawyer when I grow up? Like Dad?" "Of course you can," I smiled, wiping a bit of sauce from his chin. "But you have to be an honest lawyer." "Like you are now," the child said, looking at his father. "The kind that helps people." Julian and I looked at each other and smiled. In that moment, I saw a new family legacy being forged, not of property or status, but of integrity and courage. Back home, I stood on my balcony, looking at the stars. My husband's picture was on my nightstand, his smile as warm as ever. "My dear," I whispered, "our son has finally grown up. You can rest easy now." A gentle breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the cool scent of autumn and the sweet fragrance of the last blooming roses from the garden. At 78 years old, I had finally learned to hold on to myself while loving others, to find gentleness in my strength. And perhaps that was the best ending of all.